You're still watching TVC Breakfast. Now, China has stepped into the escalating diplomatic war between the United States and Nigeria, firmly opposing any use of religious and human rights issues as a pretext for intervention. Now, Beijing reaffirmed the support for Nigerian sovereignty and described the West African nation as a strategic partner. This follows U.S. President Donald Trump's warning that Washington may prepare military action and suspend aid to Nigeria if its government fails to address attack on Christians. Nigerian officials have rejected simplified characterizations of the violence and reiterated their preference for partnerships grounded in mutual respect. Now, joining us for this conversation is public affairs analyst Show me. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. We're so happy to have you here today for this topic because from Monday through to today, Thursday, we have been speaking about it. We know what President Trump came out and said. He first put up a tweet, but now as at this morning, we're seeing that a video has followed, and that video looks like he's really fuming. A lot of conversations have been happening surrounding that. And now we're hearing China come out and say that, Nigeria, you are my people. I support you solidly. But there are also conversations where people are saying that, is China doing this because they love Nigeria, or it's a way of quiet control, or is a way because when we talk about China and US, we know that China has told US you would not bully us in any way. We've seen a lot of conflicts between them, trade war, technology war. If you remember, during the coronavirus, Trump even said the China virus. So China and US have always had, their problems. And now China coming up to back Nigeria in this whole issue. I just quickly want to get your take on it.
We should not forget the geopolitical context. There's always that to every single issue affecting countries. Currently, we have a unipolar world, which China, Russia, and other countries in the BRIC nations are trying to create a multipolar world. So within that context, you would always have engagements, by both parties, depending on what it is. I think my own summary of what China is saying is that the Trump administration must respect Nigeria's sovereignty. You cannot say you are going to bomb a sovereign country or put soldiers on the ground. And that's what they're saying, that, look, do not force a foreign policy on Nigeria. Let it take account of its own domestic realities and, project its own foreign policy. And it's an indirect way of refuting, the claims of the Americans. But come on, look at it this way. You will remember clearly that the American government, past administrations, refused to sell weapons to us, claiming, and they always do that, the Democrats, that they were concerned about human rights violations. So refusing or claiming that we were, the level of violence being used against the terrorists, was excessive, and then they refused to sell weapons to us. It was the same argument which Trump has now rejected, now claiming that, well, you are not doing enough, and terrorists are roaming about, doing what they like. So you then ask yourself, what do you want us to do? Because it depends on which party is in power in America. The refrain of the Democrats is to say that you are having human rights abuses, you are using excessive force, which of course they did. The Biden administration did that. Even the administration before Biden, they kept referring to that, saying that they would not sell weapons to us. Now, once the Republicans are in, it's another issue because they're looking at the issues from, they also have a constituency, the evangelical movement in America, which they are trying to appeal to. And then it suits them conveniently, to take the situation in Nigeria. Look, many people have not heard from Russia, but if you actually listen to Andrei Maslov, who is the head of Center for African Studies of Moscow Institute of Higher Economics, he made it very clear that the Russians think the Americans will not move into Nigeria. They think they won't put slippers on the ground, not to talk of food. And they also feel that it's not about economics because Nigeria is not America's strategic priority. But as far as they are concerned, this is about Trump appealing to the evangelical movement in America, leading to the last elections that took place in America, which, of course, the Republicans did badly in it. So, again, Trump is furious because they did badly. Do not forget that some of those states, in New York, we have a huge population of Nigerians. Also in New Jersey, where those elections happened. So there are a lot of calculations. In reality, will Trump actually invade Nigeria? I don't think so. I think he's stepping back. But I love the government's approach to this. It's not we have a choice to, go bombastic and condemn it and do all this. But we're trying to address the issues through diplomatic channels, because I think our government also have an appreciation of what is going on and what the Americans are trying to do. Do not forget this issue of Christians persecution started since 2017, and it's a terrorist a group, designated as terrorists, that actually started this campaign. And if you understand how campaign work in Europe and America, you see that, look, during the June 12, we start 1993 thing. We had what they call roundtable conference on Nigeria. Yeah. And it's just strictly briefing a few people who in turn will take up the issue in the parliament or with their government without listening to the other parties. Okay. So we should always remember the way these things happen and government gets...
Now, one of the things that people have been really talking about is Nigerian response to this. Some people are really angry that did Trump have to say something for the Nigerian government to wake up? Number two, the initial response was that, no, it's not only Christians that are being killed, Muslims are being killed too. Is anybody supposed to die? And now it is, look, we would like to collaborate with you. Instead of condemning Nigeria and calling Nigeria a country of particular concern or a disgrace or so and so, collaborate with us. Which of them, how do you react to all these three notions?
The reaction of the Nigerian government, raising the argument that it's not only Christians being killed, that is correct. But the truth is, no one needs to die. Exactly. Whether you are a traditional religion worshipper, you are a Muslim or a Christian. But we have also seen that, unlike in the past, we've seen some tremendous improvement. And I would clearly, highlight it.
And that is the point, sir. Yeah. Because I am of a school of thought that says, show them data, show them the efforts, show them the efforts that the country is making towards ending all these killings and so on. And but that would have made better sense. I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah, you are correct. But I think the government recently, maybe yesterday or 2 days ago, came up with figures of what they think they have done. But for me, I would rather look at even what the information, the facts that are publicly available, which is to check the courts. If you look at the case of Letaway, there are people being tried in federal court in Abuja. They were arrested. Those who killed those people were arrested. Okay. They are facing trial currently. When you look at the case of Owo killings, which happened, I think, 2022 or 2023, about 2-3 years ago, again, 5 people were arrested for that killings, and they were being tried. There's no doubt about that. In the past, what we often see is after some time, they are kept in Kuje prison, then a prison jailbreak would suddenly happen, mysteriously, or we have a situation where they talk about amnesty. But that is no longer happening. That is a remarkable, significant departure from past practices within the country. Not simply because the Nigerian government, even in the past, was complicit. No, we all know the complexity of the situation. Let me give you a good example. The Tifi Jokun crisis started in 1959. That's under colonial rule. In 1964, that was a major crisis. In southern Taraba, which is largely Christian. In 1976, another major crisis leading to death. In 1991-92, another major crisis leading to death. In 2000, another major crisis, even to the point that graves of people buried were being desecrated. Yeah. How do you explain that? What were the issues? Land. Then the problem is the Jokuns are claiming that they were the original, inhabitants of Wukari in southern Taraba. The Tifis said they have been living there as residents for a long time. And it's always about land, political appointments, and economic opportunities. Yeah. It's not all the way we look at it, that are actually faith-based motivated. Go to Benue, you have the same problem. Go to Plateau, you remember the issue of the Baron.
Yes.
They even have a militia, but they're largely Christians. So a lot of that reaction is over nomadic killings. Now, go back into history.
Very true, Mr. Showme. You know, especially when you mentioned the one in Taraba State. I was there in Jokun and Ukari. I actually spoke to the chief of Ukari, and he took me through the historicity of, you know, war. I saw the evidence of war-torn, you know, incidents in that community. So that's pretty true. But there's something you mentioned earlier when the United States refused to sell ammunition to us. I think part of what gave that, you know, informed them to take that act is that some politicians from our country went to the United States government at the time to lay their complaints to them, hence that decision. But let's come back home. You've given a narrative of the longevity of this incident in the country. Till now, we are still talking about it 30, 40 years after. Why do you think we as a people have not been really able to stop this? Is it so strong or complex beyond our intellect and our capacity militarily to handle this?
No, it's not beyond our capacity, but it's complex. And I'll tell you the complexity. Go back again into history. During colonial rule, there's what they call West African Grazing Reserve route. And that is the route where all over West Africa, you have nomadic farmers, you know, that's the cattle wearers, you know, moving through the route due to climate change and all that, maybe during the dry season, you know, looking for water to feed the cattle, and they move up to Nigeria. We are on that West African Grazing Reserve route. Please check this out. But what has happened over the years is urbanization has taken place. Towns, villages have become towns. Towns have expanded to become cities. So we have actually encroached on that grazing reserve route, which have been in existence since the colonial rule. The second issue is that people have started farming, you know, using those land. That's why you see the tension is always around land and around certain areas, because they actually they fall on the West African Grazing Reserve route. But we have seen that what the colonial masters designed as a solution, you know, has become a problem. On their own part, they have moved on, you know, to grazing, to ranching from open grazing. They have moved, and that is what we're trying to do. Many people have been calling for that and say, look, the best way to address this problem is ranching. If you do ranching, then you can solve this problem. We should also not forget there's another complexity. We are part of ECOWAS. We are the major engine block in ECOWAS. We signed a treaty, West African Treaty, on free trade, you know, free movement of goods and services for 3 months. So when people think, oh, we can just close the border, you cannot. It's not as easy as that. We signed it, we are benefiting from it. And then people can move in for 3 months, you know, move their goods in or out or whichever. And it's more complex when it comes to, you know, nomadic farmers, because they do not use the border. They move in through the bush. Forest. And we have huge land. How do you protect it? So it's a bit complex. It's not as simple as people are looking at it. I am not saying that Christians are not being killed. Some Christians, even many Christians, are victims. So also Muslims. But go and look at most of the cases. They are not, you know, faith-based motivated. Look, what happened to, why have we seen a decline or almost a non-existence of bank robbery in Nigeria? Have people been asking themselves that question? It's simply because terrorism mutates. When the military, you know, eats the terrorists so hard, it became more difficult to move money through the banking system. What they simply do, you know, you can't easily rob a bank now. What they simply do is to mutate into banditry, into kidnapping. And then you have other criminal elements who, in any case, because they saw an economic opportunity of making money, would also go into kidnapping, who are not necessarily terrorists, but who are criminals. So that is how these things happen and evolve. So do you start going to bomb those who kidnap in Lagos or in Ogun or in Port Harcourt?
But
how do you resolve that?
I love the fact
when
that
they are not terrorists.
I love the fact that you mentioned banditry, because that's where I'm going to come to now. Oftentimes we've had conversations that why is it that we are negotiating with terrorists? We've given them some sort of power, you know, because we get to talk to them. At the end of the day, you negotiate with them, they still kill the person. People have had that conversation that why is that happening? But let's go back to this conversation of the U.S., you know, in invading Nigeria. We've seen Donald Trump come out and make a video again. After the tweet, he made a video, and people seem like this time around he's not joking. At the end of the day, let's look at solutions. What do you think Nigeria should be doing at this point that we're seeing another video again from the U.S. president saying that if you do not fix your house right, we will come in?
Well, Trump is coming from an angle of perceiving it as if he's in the Middle Ages, you know, when you had the Dove Vault. Well, there was Christians who were going on pilgrimage to Jerusalem were being killed, you know, and then we have to come in, the European forces will have to come in and then stop the killings and kill those who are killing them. And then they term it, the motto as Dove Vault, which is God's will, that we're doing God's will. That's the same mindset, you know, mindset which Trump has.
And you think it will not work?
Look, what works with Trump is not confrontation. And that's why I love the approach of the government, which is we should learn from Zelensky in Ukraine. Engage the Americans. We've seen the problem in Colombia, you know, with the president of Colombia, simply because of defending Venezuela. And we've seen the problem Trump is creating for Venezuela, you know, for Maduro. You know, look, the Americans under Trump are somehow unpredictable. So the best approach is to engage the government. Dialogue. Engage them in dialogue. And I think the government is trying to do that. We need to also, you know, explain the situation to so many people, so many ambassadors, so many foreign missions in Nigeria, so that they have a full first-hand information on the issue. I'm sure the Russians are very clear. I'm sure the Brazilians are clear. I'm sure the Chinese are also very clear about this situation. Same thing with South Africa. There's a lot of criminality which cannot easily attribute it to religion in Nigeria. That does not mean that you could not have had some jihadists, particularly those who reject Western education, Boko Haramists. You know, one thing to get the country in trouble. What motivated the Owo killings? The bombing of the Catholic Church in Owo. They were trying to see whether they can create mayhem in Southwest. But Nigeria did not fall for it. The people did not fall for it. So there are people, criminal elements, who wants Nigeria to split. Yes. And they will do anything to do that. So within that context, the Americans must show some level of understanding while the Nigerian government engages the American through diplomatic means.
Yes, this diplomatic means that you have talked about opens up another problem that Nigeria is facing. We don't have diplomatic missions in very key countries in the world. We don't have in the United States of America. So are we going to put a diplomatic team here in Nigeria and send them to America?
I don't agree with you that we do not have diplomatic missions.
Okay.
We have diplomatic missions in 109 countries. We have diplomatic representation in 109 countries.
Do we have leaders
but what
of
we
those
don't
diplomatic
have
missions?
are ambassadors.
Ambassadors, leaders of those diplomatic
And what led
missions.
to that, we need to understand it. It was very embarrassing experience, particularly when you travel out of Nigeria. And even for Nigerians living abroad, you get to your High Commission, they are owing money, or the place has been sealed up. There is no foreign currency coming from the government in Nigeria. There were so many cases, you can Google it, so many cases of that embarrassment. Ambassador's house, you know, residents being locked up, one thing or the other. And refusing to pay, what do they call it, traffic ticket, because we do not have the money. And so many other issues like that. So when the government decided to look at the economy, do not forget, at a point in time, we only had $5 billion in real cash, you know, in the central bank, because a lot of the money out of the $31 billion declared, $11 billion itself alone had gone to I think it's Chase Manhattan and Morgan, JP Morgan. You know, we've pledged the money to secure loans. So the money in reality no longer belongs to us until we've repaid the loan. We also have a situation where we have done forward sales of contracts. So no new money will come in except we increase our production of crude oil. At a point, we are only producing 800,000 a day. out of which 500,000 already had been pledged to borrowing. So when you look at the complexity of that situation, by 2023, government on its own, I'm not defending government in any form, government on its own has to do something drastic. That is why I think so many drastic steps were taken.
That much has been standing for
But it has been going on. That's a valid issue that, look, this has been going on for more than a year. I think about 2 years now. 2 years or a little bit more. And that there's a need to do that. But on its own, when you look at countries where, Colombia, for instance, where Trump is on the war path with them, they have an ambassador in Washington. So it's not, I do not think that the absence of an ambassador is the problem. I think the problem is the Nigerian demarketing their own countries.
I was going to come, I want to say, and this is why I'm coming to this because of our time, talking about trust deficit and Nigerians not trusting again. And I said this earlier on, there was a picture that came out that said that, you know, the Nigerian military have gone and, you know, they've handled some terrorists and everything. And the conversations on social media were so bad. Everybody was saying it's a lie. It's old pictures. It's a lie. So even things that Nigeria puts out that they are true, Nigerians, we ourselves, that we want to keep demarketing, we do not believe. How can we work on this as Nigerians?
Look, a lot depends. You know, the problem with us is we are highly emotional.
Yes.
Either partisan.
But it doesn't make us look well outside.
I know that. We create our own problems for ourselves. For instance, I was looking at a figure, a Nigerian claiming that 125,000 Christians were killed. And I said, where did you get the data from?
Yeah.
You don't even live here. We that we live here, we do not even have access to any data. Nobody has collated those data. You know, it's just a guesswork. Where there are killings, then you can use it the best way you think to push, to advance your own cause. And that is what is going on. Where is the database for Christians and Muslims in Nigeria, or traditionalists? If you look at places, go and look at the theater of war, you will realize that in Borno State, you know, it's purely a Kanuri state. There are millions of traditional religion worshippers. So how do you classify? You know, but that does not mean that killing should be tolerated. No one deserves to die through violence in Nigeria, whether you're a traditionalist, a Christian, or a Muslim. And the fact of the matter is, it's not as easy as we're looking at it. Trump is there today, you might have the Democrat tomorrow, and then claim that we are repressing, you know, the terrorists, you know, that we're using excessive violence and then raising concerns about human rights issue. It's usually the Democrat slogan. But when the Republicans come into office, it's a different thing.
Let me quickly bring this in before we wrap up with you this morning. The president has brought in new service chiefs, and their marching order is to end matters like this. Part of how they will do that is, you know, budget for weaponry and ammunition to arm them to be able to deliver on their jobs. Over the years in this country, we've given a lot of money to that, even though some analysts have said it's not really enough to handle the matter. But with what they have, can we handle it militarily?
We also have another complications involving the Americans. And I would say that now, when it comes to the military, look, when you want to buy weapons from the Americans, there are so many conditions attached to it, and it will go to Congress for approval before it's sold to you. And then you cannot just use it. You know, even in dealing with internal repression of terrorists, you have to use it in line with how the Americans want you to use it. And that is another handcuff on the hands of our military. So since then, Nigerians have tried to patronize Turkey, you know, to the displeasure of the Americans, because they think the arms industry in Nigeria is their home market. We've patronized Turkey, and now we're talking to the Chinese to get the necessary equipment which we need. And now we've seen the American government reaction. I'm not saying that that is the only reason why they're behaving like that. Now, the question is this: will the Americans sell the weapons to the Nigerian military, which they need to fight? We have new service chiefs who are described as excellent. Officers. So that is another problem, because they may eventually encounter problem along the line. But I think that has to be sorted out through diplomatic means. You know, the government engaging the Americans. Look, this is what we need to deal with this problem which you have highlighted. Will you sell these weapons to us? If they won't, then we should have a right to go to any other country,
Yeah.
whether it's Russia, China, or any other country to buy.
At the end of the day, I wish we could go on and on talking to you. You have spoken so well. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We
Thank you
just
for
hope
having
for
me.
peace and tranquility in Nigeria at the end of the day. We do not want war whatsoever. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having
Thank you very
me.
much.
Thank you.
Well, still on the show, Nigeria has recorded significant progress in the crackdown against illicit drugs across the country. Join us after the break for this very important conversation.